And hello, everyone. Welcome to the WAFER Confusion Entertainment Review. It's time for WAFER number 74. I'm one of your hosts, Thomas, aka MrWartburg, and joining me for the final time in its current form is Patrick, aka Mr. Fusion.
Greetings and salutations, true believers.
And by
How
it,
are
I
we
mean
doing?
the show, not Fusion in his final form.
Yeah, I'm ascending to my final boss form.
Yep, Fusion is evolving.
Yes.
Somebody
At
give him
the
an
age of
Everstone.
45,
Yeah,
age of 45, I felt like it was time to hit that final stage. Yeah.
yep. So yeah, just at the outset, I'm gonna say this is probably in its current form, as I mentioned, the last episode of the WAFER Confusion Entertainment Review. Fusion and I,
Yep.
of course, are still making content together. We've got our college football show. We'll continue to do React content on Twitch and YouTube, but the actual podcast, this in and of itself, is getting sunsetted. We may eventually come back, so I'm not gonna say forever, but like on podcast services, I'm not gonna pay for renewing the license this December. It's $100 I don't need to spend. I might archive it so it stays on those services. But we figured for the closing episode, we should do a little more evergreen kind of topic, as
Yeah.
well as a little retrospective. So we're marrying those two concepts, and we're going to be talking about our top 5 movies of all time, but not just our lists. No Fusion. What else are we doing?
We're talking about your list. So so guys, if you've been listening for the last few years, and you know that we like to list things from time to time, these evergreen topics. You've jumped in. You've probably, and actually, before we started rolling on this, we did talk about that really long but awesome ranking of the MCU. Which, how long was it? 2.5
Yeah, it was a
hours?
little, just under 3.
Just under 3 hours. So yeah, this I promise you, this isn't going to be a 3 hour podcast. Just because I have work in the morning. We both have work in the morning. So, but we've asked everybody to submit their top 5 movies. The best thing about this is that this is based off of what you and your likes as a person, what your top 5 movies are. So we're gonna have some vastly different lists, and it'll be interesting to see those folks that have very comparable lists too. That'll be interesting for me to say, like, Chris and like someone else, like someone, like, let's just say Chloe, they have like three of their fives are the same movies, and be like, oh, cool. But I think overall we're gonna have some pretty interesting lists out there. Yeah.
Indeed. I'm sorry, I forgot to make a tweet. So, it figures for our last episode we're being super professional. I am
Right.
typing the tweet right now that we're live. So the actual format we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through our viewer and chatters list. So like Pathos, Morally Flexible, they're here. They have some of our chatting regulars. They've got lists as well. If you're in chat and you're just lurking right now and you want to give us a list during the show, by all means, give us your top 5. So we're going to go through Pathos and Morally Flexibles. Then we're going to go through our guest lists. We have had 8 total guests on this show, a varying number of times, but only 7 have lists. Thanks, Nick. You didn't get us a list. I messaged you twice. But he's the only person that didn't get us a list. But he was on another ranking where we did our top 5 sports episode. So he kind of
Right.
gave us half a list.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through 7 guest lists, and then we'll go through ours. And I got to finish making this tweet. Fusion, vamp for me.
So you're probably asking yourself, or even us, guys, what goes into this? What are the rules? There are no real rules here, guys. It's, if Morally Flexible wants to sit down and say, what are the top 5 movies that you like? Like when someone asks you, hey, if you were down, down sick with the flu or with the vid, the 19, and you have to watch a whole plethora of movies in bed on the couch over the next couple days, are you going to sprinkle in some of your top 5 all-time movies because they're go-tos, they're destination films for you? Warburg and I, when we do this thing, the great thing about this is we both have a love for the movies, like going to the movies, right? Cinema, because it's such a different experience than like, hey, what you watch at home, but you fall in love with those films and you want to bring them home with you. You whether you purchase them physical media or you download them, whatever, But then from time to time you pull out the DVD, pull out the Blu-ray, and watch it again and again. Some people are crazy like me because there are some movies in my top 5 where I've seen hundreds of times probably, and I'm not being facetious about that. Like since I was a kid, I've watched, so just by saying that, obviously some of these movies are dated in my list, but guys, just remember, there's no real rules here. What
Yep.
you like, what are your top 5? Doesn't have to be in any particular. I mean, like in terms of like in terms of their legacy in cinema, doesn't even have to be
Yeah,
one.
your
If you
list
if you
is based on your rules.
yeah, if it's a whole collection of 5 movies with Rob Schneider in it, hey, great, dude. Is
That's a
that what
heck of a pull.
I mean, come on,
What?
you go let's see here. Big Stand,
I mean, I thought you were gonna go
The Hot
like,
Chick.
hey, if you're going like, some esteemed actor like Tom Hanks. No, we're going Rob Schneider.
Come on, dude. Seriously, someone out there is a huge Rob Schneider fan, and they let's go. Let's
Well,
go with
somebody other than
Hot
Adam
Chick.
Sandler.
Hot Chick.
Okay,
Uh,
let's
okay,
not.
never mind. I digress, guys. Let's go into let's go into the real list. Let's go into the meat
Yeah,
of
we're gonna
this.
get into the real lists here. But Pathos is in our Twitch chat. Of course, we're live at twitch.tv/MrWartburg. Got to get one last plug in. I do have one movie on your list that a couple other people have, and probably on Fusions as well, if I had to guess. But you're right. The rest of your ones, I was like, wait, that's on your best movies of all time list? Okay. But that's kind of the spirit of these lists. You got to remember, we talked to Chloe, who's like famously doesn't watch movies. So this is going to be a weird list for most people. So we're going to
Yep.
start with our viewer lists. And because Pathos brought it up first on his list, we'll start with Pathos. So
Right.
here's his list: Forbidden Planet,
Wait. Just clarify. Are you
the
going
fit
from 5 to 1?
1956. He
You're going
doesn't. I
from
don't
5
know
to
if he
1.
had an order. Let me go back to the form.
Okay. Okay.
I got to pull it up. Excuse me.
Pathos, did you not number your order?
Some people didn't. Some were like, "Hey, no order at all. Like no
Okay.
specific
Oh,
order."
that's fine. Okay.
And go back to that one. Go back to that one.
I took the extra step and went and listed mine in order. So yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like Pathos did right. No,
Okay.
no, never mind. That was Joey. Pathos is yours in order. Sorry, this is really professional. He numbered his. Okay. So we'll go ascending. Sorry, 5-1. I'll go
Okay.
in reverse. My bad. I wrote it in descending. So number 5 for him is Mr. Baseball.
Ooh.
1992, which I believe is that the one where Tom Selleck is a retired
Selleck.
MLB, goes to Japan.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Number 4 is the most recent one from 2015, Turbo Kid.
Okay. All right.
Number 3 was on my top favorite sports movies list, The Replacements, which for my money may
Nice.
be the most underrated Keanu Reeves movie in his entire filmography.
And by the way, stellar cast.
Oh, it's so
you go
good.
back you go back and look, John Favreau was like the middle linebacker, and I mean just some of the characters, but like the cast overall,
The
phenomenal.
Replacements is like Gene Hackman, right? Orlando
Hackman
is it
and
Washington?
Orlando Jones.
Jones, that's the one.
And you've asked me, and this is the third time. I want to clarify. This is the third time
I
in the
never
iteration
remember the
in
last
this
name.
iteration of WAFER. You've asked me what his name was.
I can't
It's
ever
Orlando.
remember his last fucking name. I just know his first name's Orlando.
Mad TV, Orlando Jones.
The Thing, 1982, is Pathos' second movie.
Ooh,
That one's
John
a common
Carpenter.
one on these lists.
Yeah.
So The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. And then, of course, the one I mentioned first is his first movie, Forbidden Planet from 1956.
Nice.
Yep.
Pathos, I respect that list because there is a collection of like casual, current, and like deep classic films in there.
Yeah.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
good job.
So our other chat list. Hey, no, we got 3. Sorry, I forgot somebody.
Oh.
No, wait. Jackie's was on both. Jackie, I sent the wrong link, which is my fault. So yeah, we do only have one other chatter, and that is Chris, aka Morally Flexible. We also have another Chris in chat, Gamma Caruchador, who we'll get to later on our list, because he's a guest. He had 7 guest appearances on our 74 episodes, so almost 10% of the shows. So Morally Flexible's list is as follows. I don't know. It's in order from 1st to 5th. So again, I got to do ascending order. So his number 5 movie is The Boondock Saints.
Nice.
Definitely one of those, late 90s, early 2000s cult classic movies.
Yep.
Another one from that era, Wayne's World.
Okay.
Now we're getting into the Chris's are crossing over territory. Lord of the Rings, The Two Tower, extended specifically.
The extended edition. Okay.
Yep. And then one after Your Heart Fusion, Tombstone.
Oh, Chris.
I figured that would get a good reaction. I was wondering if that one would appear on your list, because that's a great movie.
I love me some Tombstone, man. Such a great.
And then his favorite movie is The Breakfast Club.
Cool. I like it sneaking in some John Hughes. I like that.
Yep, definitely a genre unto its own. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Ah. All right, so that's it for our viewer slash chatter list. Of course, if you're in chat right now and lurking, I can't see my who's in chat thing other than my Twitch, like the actual chat pop out. So if
Yeah.
you're in chat and you're lurking and you want to give a list, by all means, put it in chat and we'll read it out on the show. All right, and of course, if you're in chat and anybody new pops in or returning regulars like Rhoda and stuff, let them know, and they can give me their lists. So we're gonna move on to our guests lists. Do we want to go within? Should we go with? Let's start with the people that have only been on the show once,
Okay.
and then we'll go up from there.
Okay.
So we'll start with Newbs, who was on our reviewing Halo Infinite episode. I believe that was another one Chris was also on, Gamma specifically. Yep. So his movies, let me go to that form. Did he give me an order? I don't believe he did. Let me double check his message. So, hang on. I can't really change it because you're on the screen. I gotta go through my Twitter DMs for his. And Noobs, there you are. All right. Okay, no particular order. All right. So, one of Noobs' favorite movies, and he gave a little disclaimer for why he picked them. Starship Troopers.
Okay.
Which he has as the best parody movie of all time. Which, hard to say he's wrong, but I would actually go Airplane.
Now, Starship Troopers is one of those movies that was so bad, it's actually good.
Yeah, like it was one of those movies that was so ahead of its time, everybody thought sucked. But you go back now and you're like, oh yeah, it's just a parody of like fascist like stuff. Like the whole imagery, the whole thing is
which it's completely different from the book. The tone is completely different.
He completely swerved it, and people didn't really get it until like a generation later.
Yeah.
Definitely one of those most misunderstood movies.
If it had come out in like right now, given the political climate in this country, it would have been a huge success, like a mega success.
Yeah, I think most definitely. Another movie on this list that's already been said. Noobs also has The Thing.
Okay.
Now we get into our first animated one, I believe, but I actually didn't know about Turbo Kid, so I don't know if that one's animated. But a Goofy movie.
Okay, I like this.
Which is a definite musical animated classic.
This is really like this. If you know Noobs, this is a Noobs list.
This is most definitely a Noobs list. Then we have the brackets REC, which he says is the best zombie movie of all time.
Okay, not a fan, but I get it.
Given that we're up to spooky season, that may have to be a Discord movie night.
Sure.
To be determined. And then, of course, he has a Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage classic, maybe Michael Bay's best movie, The Rock.
Love that movie. It's not on my list, guys, but that is a great movie.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest action movies of all time.
Yeah.
You had Ed Harris just absolutely chewing it on the scene. It was awesome.
Sean Connery rocking probably the best hairpiece in all of cinema, man. Like that toupee is like next level.
Yeah. It's a movie that is so over the top, it still works. It's awesome. Yeah. Like Nicolas Cage isn't the most over the top thing in that movie. It's an ensemble of over the top, and it's awesome.
Yes.
All right, so our other one-time guest appearance, that is Chloe, the Echo Chloe. So, and I'm gonna go ahead and make sure we timestamp our guests for either in the comments or the description, so people in the future can go back. So Chloe's list, I believe she said no particular order. She actually had to fill it out twice because she couldn't even think of a fifth one. That's how few movies she sees.
It's all the Pokemon movies, guys.
Oh yeah, definitely. So Transformers: Dark of the Moon.
Okay.
The Incredibles, which if you know Chloe, absolutely, it's The Incredibles.
Yeah.
And Arrival, which is straight up one of the best sci-fi movies in the last 10 to 15 years.
Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, it's one of his first like big pops on Western cinema. Awesome movie.
That movie is what brought it. That got him Dune. That movie got him
as well. Yeah. Well, I probably Blade Runner first and then Dune.
Oh, Blade Runner. Yeah, you're right. Blade Runner 2049.
But amazing movie, great sci-fi, like mind-bending twist kind of thing. And it was fantastic. Prisoners, which, given
Okay.
the Jake Gyllenhaal of it all, makes sense.
Sure.
And then lastly, a one that's probably on this list a few times is Into the Spider-Verse.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which, spoiler alert, might be on my list.
Wow.
Maybe. I'm still, even as we talk, I might be changing my mind on things.
So I appreciate the balance of having action, adventure, animation, and some drama and horror in there too. I like that. I'm liking these lists, guys. I
Yeah.
really am.
So now we'll go to our two timers. We'll start with Joey. I believe at least had two. He might have had 3 episodes. I went back and I thought I double counted everything. That seems low for Joey on this show, but I can't actually remember.
I think we played a lot of games with him. He wasn't on the
Yeah,
show
it all
though.
blends together.
Yeah.
So Joey's list, did he give me an order? Mm, No, he just said, God, I have to think about this on the form. Because I filled this out via Google Forms. So his list is, okay, I'll leave the weird one for last. There Will Be Blood is his first one.
Okay.
The Godfather. The Sandlot, which is definitely a quintessential 90s classic. And
It is.
for him and I don't know if anyone else's schooling, like time at school, is like this. I think that's probably the most played movie in Titanca elementary, middle school, period.
Okay.
Every teacher played that for everything. We even, because of that movie, our jazz band that would like tour around Iowa, we played Tequila, and like that was like everyone's favorite movie growing up. Because yeah, it was a big baseball town. That was definitely the sport everybody cared about most as a kid. So Willow is his other one.
Nice.
The Great Pull.
Yes.
And then I can't believe when he put this on this list, I can't believe this was on his list, but I can because it's Joey.
Okay.
Fusion, I also want you to guess it. What's one of the dumbest but coolest sci-fi weapons of all time?
The Lotus Blossom from The Last Starfighter.
No. But you're in the right era. Crawl.
Ooh. Kroll.
Remember
The weapon. Yeah.
what is the name of that thing?
I forget the name
Is
of
it
it.
is it just, yeah, like it's the thing with the blades that come out and you hold it
Yes.
and you throw it like that.
Yeah.
So it's such a dumb, can't practically work in any way weapon. But it's on the poster, just holding it up. It's like it's somehow iconic even though it's so dumb. And that's on Joey's list.
Hey man, I respect the hustle, Joey. I do.
Hey, I appreciate Joey just putting it all out there.
And hey, he helped me bring up, The Last Starfighter, which apparently is getting a major reboot, which given AI and like,
Oh, and
you
Gary Wood
know,
is like pushing fucking hard for that. If you follow him
this
on Twitter about it,
yeah,
he
yeah.
wants it.
That is a movie that deserves a reboot. Like most films, like, it was a story ahead of its time with CGI, right?
Yeah.
Horribly, it is a very dated movie. Just like Kroll is a very dated movie, but man, yeah, that's a good pull. I like that.
All right,
Pauline
so our
Kroll.
other
Right.
two-time guest only got her list to me today, but that
Okay.
is Pauline/Crofteria. So you can follow her there. Like I'm gonna put everyone's links as below if they're like a streamer and such. You can follow him there. So Crofts, I knew what one of her would be on her list, and that's Pacific Rim.
Okay, yep.
I think
Yep.
her and I and Gamma as well, who's probably in chat, love this movie. It is just a phenomenally stupidly awesome movie. I believe it's even in the honest trailer. It's either the dumbest awesome movie or the most awesome dumb movie ever made. It's either or. Flip a coin. Like the whole thing. It's just Guillermo del Toro getting to play in a whole new IP, actually using scale correctly, with dope kaiju fights between huge giant robots. It's fucking awesome. But it's super dumb.
Can we talk about the greatness that is Guillermo del Toro? Because, he started off in mainstream movies with Dead Alive.
Mhm.
Fucking great horror film, right? I mean, it's not like Evil Dead level, but it's a very, very good movie. Then he goes, just like the Hellboy stuff. And I know Ron Perlman's pushing for the Hellboy trilogy to come to an end. I am all for that. Let's get that third film, guys. Let's get it over with before Ron Perlman is too old to do it. But, oh man, I love Guillermo del Toro. The Orphanage. Oh man, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim. Like when you list out his movies, you're like, good God, this guy just the range with Del Toro.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And we've talked about it before. That Hellboy movie, it's got to be animated because
Yep.
assuming you're going to bring Selma Blair in, it's got to be animated. But
Yeah.
it'd be freaking awesome to see done.
Yeah.
So we're gonna. That's our first one. Her other
Love
ones
Pacific. Good choice.
is a pretty common one. It's either this or the sequel, and she went with Alien.
Okay.
One or two others may have aliens on the list. We have John Wick, the
Nice.
original, 2014. She went with Legally Blonde. What did she say
Ooh.
specifically? I believe she said it's a feminist classic. Like, well, hard to disagree. And then the last one is one I thought would be on Chloe's list, but it's on Croft's. I need to get those two on a show together or do something with
Yeah.
them. And she went with Megamind, which is a
Okay.
vastly underrated DreamWorks animation.
Yep.
Great movie. I really enjoy that.
Given Chloe had The Incredibles, Croft has Mega, like they could put together a really good podcast.
Oh yeah, for sure. That'd be a great show. All right, so that is for it for our twos. No, wait, we have one more. Jackie was on two shows. Jackie was actually, and Croft was actually on the most popular episode of WAFER. That's the Dragon Age ranking
The
episode.
Dragon Age, which I wasn't on
Yeah, you
because
weren't on.
that. What is that telling about me?
And
That's
Croft was on
very
the other popular one. Christian was on one of them. He was on the
yeah,
Star Wars one, the breakout I did. But
yeah,
Croft did the Mass Effect ranking as well, which is a great episode.
yeah.
So Jackie, she gave us a specifically American list because she's got a much wider range of different types of cinema, given her upbringing. So she went with
Mm-hmm.
American films.
Okay,
So,
appreciate that.
and one for her I knew was coming. So here's her list in no specific order: Muppet Treasure Island,
Okay,
which is just phenomenally that's one of those quintessentially try to find a flaw in that movie kind of movies. It's not like I don't think anyone would say it's high cinema, but it's definitely a perfect for what it's going for kind of movie. So hard to disagree.
I'm a big Muppets Take Manhattan guy, so that's remember, guys. I'm older. I'm 45, so
That's
yeah.
true. yeah. But I knew I liked her.
And
All right.
who
She also has
doesn't? Who
Dick
wouldn't?
Tracy,
Okay, the Warren Beatty, Annette Bening film.
I believe.
Yeah.
And she
Okay.
has Princess Bride,
Of course.
of course.
Classic.
Aliens. There's the other. Is it the original
Oh.
or the sequel? Which one do you go with? They're both great. And also Clue, which if I had to if somebody told me, hey, what's Jackie's favorite movie, I'd say Clue.
Yeah.
In terms of what I know about Jackie. So, all right, that's a great one. That's a really solid list.
I love that list. I love that list.
All right, so now we're moving up to our 1 3-time guest. That was Christian, who I mostly had on to talk about The Expanse,
Yep.
but because it's one of my favorite shows. Speaking of The Expanse, I started watching a show that gave me huge it's a different type of sci-fi, but in that kind of adapted sci-fi epic kind of way.
Yeah.
Foundation
With a lot like it's that whole space with bureaucracy
kind of thing.
feeling, I
You get
guess.
the
Yeah.
interweaving political stuff.
Yeah.
Expanse, it's a different type of sci-fi because they're going hard sci-fi, and all this, and they're really on the nitty gritty, and it's a much smaller time scale. Whereas Foundation is more epic in scope, but you still get a similar sense of vibe. And they both have Jared Harris, so everyone should watch Foundation. It's fantastic. I binged both seasons in 7 days. Awesome time. All right, so back to Christian's list. All right, did he give me an order? Let me go back to responses. Sorry, I got to go work through my form. All right, he didn't give me an order. Okay, so we're going with Leon the Professional. At least I think that's
Great
what he said.
movie.
He just said the Professional. My guess is it was Leon the Professional
Well, when it first
because
came out in the
it had
theaters,
both names.
well, when it was initially in the theater, it was just called The Professional. And then when it was released on DVD, it was originally The Professional, but then an international version, very controversial version came out, it was Leon the Professional,
Gotcha.
where there's much more of that whole Lolita kind of storyline. There's only like a couple of scenes that they kind of allude to that, but it actually makes the plot feel a little better. But
Gotcha.
it's a little awkward, yeah.
Then we have Inception,
Okay.
the first
like that.
Christopher Nolan reference, I think, so far on any
Yep.
list.
Yep.
Silence of the Lambs.
Wow. Okay.
Independence Day, which in that very similar vibe of Pacific Rim in terms of
Very patriotic of you,
bombastic,
Christian.
you know. And then last, a stone cold sci-fi classic, The Matrix.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely got to have a nod to that. It's one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, for sure.
Yes. And you know what, man? It holds up pretty well considering
Mhm.
it's from 1999. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we have one person who was on 4 episodes, and that was Nick. But Nick
Wow.
didn't give us a list, so thanks, Nick. But for real, thanks for being on all the episodes, on all the last
Major
minute stuff.
League. I'm gonna say Major League,
Great movie.
Angels in the Outfield.
Oh yeah, go with the
Remember the
sports.
Titans.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go with all sports
Yep.
with Nick.
All sports movies for Nick. It works. So we have our last but most certainly not least of our guest episode list. And that is a guy who's been on, as I said, 7 episodes. That is Chris, aka Gamma Caruchador.
And I know
So
he's in chat.
he's in chat right now, so he can give us some play by play. Let me go back to your list, Gamma. Hang on. He gave us some honorable mentions. And because Chris was on so many episodes, I'll go ahead and say his honorable mentions first. We have another Chris Nolan movie, The Dark Knight, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Wow.
Wait, Chris, you listed one in your honorable mentions and your actual list. We have another Muppet Treasure Island.
Okay.
And this is the one that's in both lists. You have Galaxy Quest in both lists.
Of honorable mentions and in your top 5.
Yeah, it's in both. Okay, if it's on the main list, it's supposed to be there. So Galaxy Quest is his 5th movie.
Okay.
So 3 honorable mentions.
Considered the best Star Trek film?
I disagree. I should say it's the best non-Star Trek movie.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Until now, the Orville. Until that, it was the best non-Star Trek for that kind of sci-fi.
Okay.
And I don't disagree. Also a really good comedy.
Yeah.
He has one of my favorite modern westerns. I might go 3:10 to Yuma over this one, but Magnificent Seven, the 2016 version, is a phenomenally well-made movie with an exceptional cast. So, can't disagree there. Then we have Empire Strikes Back, our first Star Wars poll.
Nice.
Fellowship of the Ring, another return to the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
And then the number 1 movie on Chris's list, Into the Spider-Verse.
Nice.
Oh, you haven't seen the new 3:10 to Yuma? It's awesome. Russell Crowe,
You gotta
Christian
watch it,
Bale.
man.
It's great. It just works. Fantastic. Okay, so that's Gamma's lists.
All right.
So that's all our guests, all 7 that submitted a list. Some of them I'm for sure I need to actually see. I haven't seen all of them, of course. But I appreciate everyone who submitted lists, including Nick that didn't. It's, the last 3 years of making this show has been a lot of fun, and having guests and friends come on and help out for specific topics, whether that be for a specific show or another evergreen kind of like ranking list. It was always a fun time, and that's definitely some of the most fun I've had making this show. So thank you, everyone, as well as our chatters for giving you their lists and for sticking around in chat over these last 3 years. But now that the table has been set, Fusion, let's get into the main list. And since I've done so much talking as I had the lists, number 1, my question is, did anybody's list surprise you?
Actually, no. They're really spot on. I think the Muppets Treasure Island being on 2 lists was a little like, whoa, okay, I need to go back and watch that. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but like, I'm a big Muppets Take Manhattan guy, obviously. But I now that I really think about it, I probably like Treasure Island over just the Muppets, the 2015 movie.
Fair enough.
I need to go back and watch it. But then obviously that one, The Thing being in several lists, it's a fucking great movie. Love it. I mean, they tried to do I guess you could call it a prequel. Is that what we can call it? The
with Prometheus and wait, no, you're talking The Thing. Sorry, I was thinking Aliens. Sorry,
yeah,
different thing.
The Thing. So I think that 2016 movie was technically a prequel, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
might have been, yeah. And I think isn't somebody setting up to do a remake?
I think so. But basically, I love The Thing because if you spoke, was it German or Russian, guys? If you understood at the very beginning, basically the movie was spoiled for you.
Wasn't it like Norwegian?
Was it Norwegian?
Whatever they speak in Norway or something.
I thought it was Russian. That basically they were yelling at the Americans to Kurt Russell and them.
They were yelling what's going on. Yeah.
the dog is an alien. Like they were just basically saying it. The dog is a monster, and that would have ruined the film for
Yeah,
you.
it's kind
But
of like the beginning of Iron Man, where if you speak that specific dialect of
oh yeah, you
what is
understood
it,
what's going on.
Afghani, like
Yeah,
that's what you got. The
yeah,
plot's just given away. Yeah.
yeah.
So Fusion, as I
But
said, the table is set. The board is
okay.
yours. Give me your
Let
list,
me.
ascending 5 to 1, and if you have any honorable mentions, start with those.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna give you my three honorable mentions because, man, this list wasn't easy for me because there have been some movies that have come out over the past couple of years, the past 10, 15 years that have really shaped like what I love about cinema. But I'm going to start with honorable mentions. I'm going to go into ascending order here. I have 8 on my list, so my 5 and 3 more. So number 8's The Matrix. Fucking love that movie. 1999, going to a late night showing, getting blown away watching that film. The soundtrack's phenomenal. I love The Matrix. I watched it like many, many times over. The animatrix that resulted from it leading into the expanded universe. Animatrix is one of those underrated animation films, the anthology pieces. Got to watch that. Next one, Seven, is Seven. The movie Seven is number 7 for me. Um, Unbelievable cast, great story. The fact that they managed to keep Kevin Spacey on like not listed on the cast, and then he shows up at the very end in the third act, phenomenal. Number 6, kind of douchey here, but I love this movie, man. It's The Crow, the Brandon Lee film from 1994. Love that film. Let's go on to my top 5 though. Top 5. Number 5 is an animated one. Sure, you probably know what it is. You've seen the picture, the poster many a times. You've heard me talk about it being the greatest Transformers movie, and it is. It is Transformers the movie. Love that film, man. I have watched that thing probably at least 100 to 100, 100 to 120 times in my life. Just over and over again, I watch that movie. I watch it like every couple of months. You're gonna hear it. Usually starts with the soundtrack playing on Spotify, and then I'm like, I gotta go watch that movie. So I'll come home and watch it. Number 4, bit of a shocker for you guys. Don't know if this may catch you by surprise. Everything, everywhere, all at once. It made my top 5 list, man. That movie, I watched it about 5 or 6 times since it came out in the theater, and I absolutely love that film. The casting's great. Ki Hu Kwan and Michelle Yeoh are absolutely phenomenal, and the story's great. Is it Ken Young? Ken Young? I forget his name. Um, the old guy. He's like 90 years old. He's been in Hollywood
Oh,
for
you
a
mean
very long
James
time.
Hong?
James Hong. James Hong. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
wanted to say Ken. James Hong. Uh, he's phenomenal in it as well. Love that movie, man. Love it. I don't know. What do you think? You think that's a crazy
I
one to add in
No,
there?
not at all. That's definitely in terms of this era of kind of superhero fandom. I would say like post 2008, we're in a different genre of modern
Sure.
movie making. I think that might be the most off the wall yet hitting all the right notes, multiverse like craziness, but put to film.
Yeah.
That still has a point and a message that is clear. Like
Yep.
it hits the mark.
Yep. It's meta, but it has so much emotion into it. That's like just how you manage to be so expansive yet so personal at the same time.
Yeah.
And A24 is a amazing studio.
Hmm.
I love A24. So my number 4 is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Number 3, it's gonna catch you all by surprise, man. I guarantee you. My wife did guess this one. So I asked my wife last week, "Hey, if I had a top 5 list, what would be it?" Of course, she named Transformers the movie. A couple of other ones on here she got right, but this one was her second one after that. It's High Fidelity, the John Cusack movie from 2000. I loved the book when the movie came out. Like I said, it was in 2000, so I'm in my very early 20s. I was in a very weird point in my life, and that movie resonated so much with me. And John Cusack's character resonated so much with me. Except he was a little older. What does it all mean? Is kind of the whole point of it for him. And the book's a little different. It's a little more personal. Um, but I love that movie. Obviously, one of the early films with Jack Black. He was doing Tenacious D, but they were doing their is it Fuse TV? I can't remember that cable show, the cable network, Fuse Television. They were doing their in Canada. They were doing this Tenacious D TV show, and that's how he got casted in this, and then immediately took off after this. Um, great music, amazing soundtrack. Some of the best one-liners come out of that. Uh, High Fidelity, man, love that movie. Yeah, number three. Number two, it's been on someone's list. Got to put it on here, man. Tombstone. Fucking love Tombstone, man. Amazing cast. And as someone that was, born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, this movie was like my dad was a big Western guy. He loved those old spaghetti Westerns. Like he would just sit on the couch, watch them all day long. And I watched them. I wasn't a fan of John Wayne. I was never a fan of the Duke. But man, when this movie came out, I was like, this is like a Western for me, right? Um, they took they took some of the great elements of the Old West, modernized it, but then Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday, just one of the best character roles in cinema. Like how he transformed himself into this character and became him, and he's just has some of the best one-liners, like in movies. Period. Some of the best one-liners are in Tombstone. So yeah, Tombstone is number two. Yeah, that's my number
That
two
is my
film.
most recently watched one, pretty much, I think, of anyone's list right now.
What do you think about Tombstone, man? Because
I
I know
enjoyed it, but it's
it's a bit
definitely.
controversial for people.
I think there's some subplots that I don't enjoy, like the whole thing with
Okay.
the romance and his wife, which is like kind of dated in terms of like she has no agency.
Okay.
It's just like from his, we only see his perspective that she's a drunk and that she ends up killing herself. That's really all we get, you know? That's not great. Obviously, and if it was made now, that probably wouldn't be the case. Like, it would be looked at differently, but still a very, very good movie. Don't get me
Well, I
wrong.
think the whole point of that was to just kind of make him kind of the vic
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
the
They were
suff
definitely framing it a certain
yeah,
way.
framing him as a suffering character in that relationship where, she ended up surviving. She died years later, but she ended up moving away and remarrying and all that stuff
Yeah,
before she passed away. So it wasn't like she just was like a junkie that died immediately after he left or anything like that.
yeah.
But I understand that's one, and I think the other thing is, as someone who's a little bit of a historian, particularly with the Old West, they framed Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp as having this very long friendship. The truth of the matter is, when they got to Tombstone, they had only known each other for like 5 or 6 years. It wasn't like they had spent decades, the last 10 or 15 years being really close. Like they had only met a few years before that. I'm gonna say when Earp was in Kansas, that's where they met. And they do frame Doc as someone who's killed a lot of people. Honestly, records are they estimate him in his lifetime to have killed maybe like 5 people total, including the two that he killed at the OK Corral. So, there's a few things that they did take liberties on. That's any movie that's like they try to base in history, they always end up finding they have to take liberties on. I mean, hell, we can talk about The Blind Side, what's going on with
Oh
that
yeah,
right
that's
now, right?
certainly
Like
a
that's
that's certainly in the moment.
God, oh man. But for me, it was like I said, my dad was a big Western guy. Those old spaghetti westerns, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of that stuff. He was a huge fan. Hondo, God, his favorite movie for fucking ever was Hondo. Um, I really didn't resonate with them. And then Tombstone came out, and that was probably where I felt like, okay, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the Old West, a little bit more, just because it was framed in a very modern approach to with cinema. So I love Tombstone, man. And whenever people tell me like, hey, what's a good Western, but I don't want to watch anything too dated, I always tell them go watch Tombstone. Number one for me. This one was tough because when I think about this one, it's like a movie that I've seen hundreds of times, and I will go back over and over. And when it ends, I say that was an amazing film. And I had to pick which episode it had to be, and for me, it is Empire Strikes Back. That's my number one, man. I mean, as much as I love Star Wars, New Hope, I if I picked New Hope just because it was the one that kickstarted the whole thing. Okay, I love New Hope, but for me, Empire is just my favorite Star Wars film. Right after that, I'm gonna probably say Rogue One, man. It's probably my second favorite. I love Rogue One. I think it's damn near a really good Star Wars film. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back, great soundtrack. Obviously, the cast is great, but they take things to the next level. They expand the universe, and at the end of it, they leave you wanting more. How much better could it be? When you knew that there was going to be another film coming up. So, yeah. I love Empire Strikes Back, man. That is my favorite Star Wars film. That's my number one.
Fair enough. You're right. I did not see High Fidelity coming.
Yeah, I catch people off guard with
But
that, man,
knowing you,
because
now that you say it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I
I'm a
just didn't
big
think
music
about
guy.
it.
Big music guy. I love music history, and when I read the book, it goes. They have chapters dedicated to like just rantings about music, pop music, and like I really when I read the book, I was like, oh, I really like this, and then went to the theater one night at the Draft House here in Austin, 2000. I'm watching it by myself, and I was like, man, I really related to that film. Bought the DVD as soon as it came out, and I watched it pretty much like once a week. I would watch High Fidelity. Like, I loved that film, and I still do. And man, as I've gotten older, I haven't felt like as much of a connection to it, but every now and then I'll go back and watch it, and it's like, oh, okay, well. And just a little tidbit about that. They at the very end, if you've seen High Fidelity, the final scene is Jack Black's character singing Marvin Gaye, "Let's Get It On," which is a big part of the song itself has a big part in the movie, right? Um, they were that was the first time Jack Black ever sang on camera, and he was nervous as hell. And the story goes they had did multiple takes, and he was like trying to get in the mood and get in the mood, and the director was pissed at him. He's like, "That's not what we want," because he was trying to sing very Tenacious D like, very goofy, and they were like, "No, no, no, you've got to sing this like." It's Marvin Gaye. Like you have to sing it from the heart, and he just couldn't do it because he was like, "Look, my mind was so set within Tenacious D of being kind of goofy that it didn't really work." And so they took a break and they came back in. And then when the very next take they did, what you see on the tape, like in the film, is that take in its entirety. Like he comes out, whatever, does his little spiel, and then he starts singing, and then they sings the rest of it until the credits. That was just the take the take right after the break, and he was like so freaked out that he wasn't gonna nail it. He was like, "I'm gonna lose my job," like blah 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 blah. But yeah, hey man, it's a good story behind that movie. Yeah, yeah.
Fair enough. All right, so now we're going over to my list, which I should preface by saying this list, it's got some similar kind of movies to Fusions. One, it's in the Star Wars family, and it's with these lists, it's all about what you prioritize, what you give
Right,
weight. So, like
right.
Fusion said, he chose Empire over A New Hope because he didn't weight this is what started it for me
Yeah.
versus everything else in the movie. I'm more on the other side, and then I'm going to
Okay.
give a little more credence to the first in a series than like a sequel, generally. Not always, because sometimes it's clear as day which one's better. But when it comes to that, splitting hairs decision, I'm going to give a little more weight to, like the original or what started it for me. So just to give you a little spoiler into my list, because I do have some honorable mentions.
Okay.
So I have ones like, God, I want to put this somewhere on the list, but I can't see myself putting this actually in the top 5. One that you could flip a coin with, and I'd live with. Actually, maybe 2. One of those is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay.
As I've said multiple times on this show, the 3 franchises that I watched as a kid religiously that were not the Mighty Ducks, which were what my siblings and I all watched. The stuff that was like me and my dad. It was Indiana Jones trilogy. We had that on VHS. We had the Star Wars trilogy, and we had the box set 1 through 6 of the TOS movies,
Okay.
as well as Die Hard. But that was more when I got older. Like
No Back to the Future.
my dad, we didn't have it.
Okay.
I don't know if he ever watched it growing up because he grew up on the farm. He could only go see so many movies, right?
Right.
And Star Wars was one he went and saw. He said he saw it a dozen times.
Yeah.
So he owned several versions of Star Wars. And I grew up on the 94, the THX, which was up until recently with the despecialized, for my money, the best way to watch Star Wars. Because it was the most true to theatrical cut we've had since, especially
Yeah.
with all the Lucas revisions. So that's like Star Wars is on my list, but that's coming later. Indiana Jones as a trilogy isn't as strong as most of the others that I grew up with, but Raiders is a phenomenal movie,
Okay.
and it was so close to going on my list. Another one that's so close is Ghostbusters.
Okay.
For my money, pound for pound, one of the greatest comedies ever written. It really blends multiple different genres together, with the kind of supernatural elements. It harnesses amazing comedic timing. The writing is super tight. Like it just fucking works as a movie. It's a straight 10.
It's crazy to think we almost got through horror film because Dan Aykroyd's original script had
Yeah,
them
because he's a
them in
huge horror
hell.
head. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like because John Belushi was originally going to be one of the lead Ghostbusters, obviously at the time before he passed away, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was supposed to be a horror film in the truest sense of a horror film where they get thrown into hell and they have to fight their way out of hell. So I was like, okay, that would have been a very interesting film, right? Would have been different, but
Yeah.
you're right. It with Reitman, it had to have been a comedy. It had
Yeah.
to be.
It just it with the whole cast, it just every joke hits. Like
Yeah.
they just land and it just works. It may be the best 80s movie period.
And I want to say Harold Ramis is growing up, I loved Harold Ramis. And I'll say it, I've said it several times on this show. One of my favorites is Harold Ramis. Stripes is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Even though as a kid I wasn't supposed to watch it, I still watched it.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
So that one was another one of those flip a coin and it's on my list. I can live with it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
My other two are not as close, so they're like true honorable mentions. That is Die Hard,
Okay.
the first one. That is a Ullman family tradition for at least 10 years growing up. We'd watch it every Christmas season, including when my brother was like 3. Like at some point, my parents stopped giving a shit about R-rated stuff. But when I was real little, they were like, no R-rated movies. Like my parents, we couldn't, like those spaghetti westerns you were talking about, couldn't watch
Yeah.
them. Nope, not gonna happen. Not with my mom. My dad wouldn't have cared, but my mom said no. So Die Hard goes on my list. It's just, I think more modern action movies surpass it, but it is the template for an incredible action movie. And then a sports comedy, I waffled between the two, and Replacements was close because it's just fucking hilarious. But I went with Major League.
Okay.
It's just that movie. It's from the jump, like with the two guys that work the stadium crew talking about how they suck, and
They're
the owners'
shitty.
meetings with this guy's dead. Cross him off the list, Finn. Like, and then they move on. It just starts and just fucking goes. It's got some great sports humor. It's so good. Phenomenal movie.
And hey, that movie would not have worked without Bob Uecker.
Oh no, he made it. Like
He made it like it was one of those little it's one of those sprinkled in things that just made the film great.
yeah, it's one of those glue
Good,
glue
great.
parts that just
Just a bit
it
outside.
just works, man. It's such a great movie. That's my honorable mentions. My number 5, and I'm kind of going ascending, but honestly, you could change the order on any given day. My number 5 is my latest ad. While we were talking, I was like, oh my god, this isn't on the list. And it may be my favorite modern action movie and also comic book movie. Maybe. That's Dread 2012.
Okay.
It is 90 minutes of just pure fucking action perfection. Carl Urban at his best, never even seeing his face. You got Olivia Thirlby. You got just incredible action. Lena Headey is the villain. The soundtrack is amazing. The backstory behind it is even cooler. Like the whole the director just fucked off, and Alex Garland was like, I guess I'll direct. And he wrote it, but he also is the shadow director. And then that kind of spawned his ascent into sci-fi filmmaking. It's incredible. It's just an incredible movie all around. Just one of the best. Hey, you need to pick an action movie to show somebody. I'm gonna go Dread 2012.
Okay.
It's one of my all-time favorites.
Damn shame we never got a sequel.
I know. Carl Urban's like, I want to do it. I want it, and it's Carl fucking Urban.
Right.
What are we doing? Crazy. So another one that's a comic book movie, but I view it more as a coming of age and a comic book movie. It's another one that's been on the list previously, and that is Into the Spider-Verse. Because it's more superhero movie. Dread's not a superhero movie, even though it's an adaptation of a comic book. So I would go with Into the Spider-Verse. As James Gunn recently said, it's likely the greatest superhero movie made to date. And I can't
That's
quite
fair.
disagree with him, because a lot of these superhero movies will marry different kind of themes. Like Winter Soldier has that political spy thriller element. Dark Knight has that more mob story, detective, kind of noir bend to it. And that all kind of culminates in the finale. And Into the Spider-Verse is that coming of age story with superheroes. And it absolutely works to perfection. I don't think it will ever be passed. I could see maybe like a Super Sons kind of title getting close to it,
Okay.
but I don't think anything's going to come close to it in terms of hitting that mark so perfectly with those two different kinds of stories that come together, plus the multiverse aspect of it. But really, it's the coming of age with Miles and the multiverse superhero craziness. It just works super, super well. And the soundtrack, again,
Yep.
phenomenal. My next one is I wondered if this would show up on any others, but it's not. But I think for a lot of people, it'd be in their honorable mentions. It's an epic in the true Hollywood sense of the word epic, but made fairly recently, and that is Gladiator, which
Okay.
I think is maybe one of Ridley Scott's best movies. You got Russell
Sure.
Crowe. It's like a traditional like Hollywood. Fuck it, we're gonna go as long as we need kind of epic. Awesome music. The set pieces are just incredible. You know, it's like not drab. Like, was it The Last Duel he did recently?
Yeah.
Like Napoleon looks very matte finished. You know, like kind of tone colored down, whereas like Gladiator's not. And coupled with Russell Crowe's great performance, it's definitely one of my ultimate. I have to like if I'm in a not even in a mood like if I need a movie to watch, Gladiator's gonna come to mind. I want to watch that movie. It's a phenomenal movie. Now we're back to sci-fi for my number two,
Okay.
and that is where I differ with you on the best Star Wars movie.
Okay.
I would go with A New Hope because when I think about what themes in Star Wars work best for me, the best movies that hit those themes, the best movie is Star Wars: A New Hope. You know, in terms of like everything with the Jedi and the explanation of the Force and Luke's, like the whole trench run at the end where Luke trusts himself and the Force. That's for me is the best Star Wars moment. Like for all those moments, it's the best Star Wars movie.
Well, I mean, it does take like the two sequels are obviously carrying on a story that was based off of the works of Joseph Campbell, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and he like just the postulation of like the hero archetype and their struggle and the characters around them and their arc from start to finish. All of that's in this movie. So I understand that. For me, it was the emotion in Empire.
Oh, I completely agree. It's a
Yeah.
similar argument of are you Infinity War or Endgame?
Yeah, exactly.
And for me, I'm an Infinity War guy.
And I'm an endgame guy.
It's a similar kind of thing,
Yeah.
but though in reverse.
Yeah.
Because like the themes, like the ending specifically, most prevalently, I enjoy more in Infinity War, which is a similar ending to Empire. That kind of like how you'd
Yeah.
feel about the ending, but it's
Yeah.
just kind of in reverse, which is a little odd. So that's a little idiosyncrasy into our lists. But my last one, and since this is the
Uh-oh.
last to be revealed, if you had to take a guess, what would you guess? Hint, I've already said this franchise.
I'm gonna say the Wrath of Khan.
Nailed it. It's Star Wars 2, The Wrath of Khan, which is pound for pound, I think, the best sci fi movie ever made. It's a submarine movie in space. And it
You know
somehow
what's
is so good, it's a sequel to an episode most of the audience will not have seen. And
20,
it
20
fucking
years before,
works.
20 years earlier, right? It was
Something
like
like that,
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Like, it somehow is incredible.
Yeah.
Ah, it's so good.
You know what's crazy about these things? When you go back and watch Wrath of Khan, it's not like it was a nonstop action movie,
No,
right?
it's slow.
It's slow, but it also is not a long runtime. Like a
No,
lot happens pretty quick in the film. The pacing feels slow, but then when it wraps up, you're like, oh wait, it's only been not even 2 hours.
yeah.
Okay,
And I
cool.
think the change in soundtrack between motion picture to the second helps the most with
Yeah,
that kind of more, not quite militaristic, but that kind of more, and I think that was on purpose to go with more of a military type bent to the soundtrack because it's a
yeah,
submarine movie. You know, it's
yeah.
these two ships duking it out, and you have that kind of tension, and that the score just absolutely nails it. But you still get that swelling operatic Star Trek music that set the table for what would come for future shows. It was just a phenomenal piece of filmmaking.
And honestly, it solidified the bond between the characters Kirk and Spock. Like
Yeah,
that was like we knew that when we talk about the stories of the Enterprise that involve the Kirk era, this was the quintessential story right here, you
Hmm.
know.
And
And
like
then we go,
if I was trying to get anyone into Star Trek with a
yeah,
movie, this
yeah.
is the one I go with.
And then you
Not the
have to
new ones.
immediately show,
You go
no,
this.
but you immediately have to show them the search for Spock right after
Oh
that
yeah,
too. You have
it's a trilogy.
it's a trilogy
Two,
because
three,
and then the
four are a
voyage,
trilogy.
yeah, and the voyage home is like holy shit, which is crazy because okay, Search for Spock was the first Nimoy directed film, right? He
I
didn't
believe
do
so. Yes.
Wrath of Khan because he didn't want to
Nicholas
come
Meyer did
back.
this the first one, and
Yes,
he's famously had never watched Star Trek.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, product of the
And
University of Iowa writers' room.
if I remember correctly, Nimoy was like semi-retired at that point and didn't want to do Star Trek anymore. And I think they had used some of his like IP, and then he sued them, and then they ironed that all out. He was still a little bitter, but then they called him and said, "Look, what will it take to bring you back in the fold?" And he was like, "I want to direct a film." They're
Yeah,
like,
because he wasn't even
"Well,
really in the movie.
no." They're like, "Why don't you direct the next Star Trek?" And he's like, "Okay." And what are we going to do it about? Let's bring back Spock. He was apprehensive, but it's one of those things where it's like when you hear the backstories behind the whole thing and how eventually they all grow to embrace the Star Trek world and the community, right? It's an amazing story. And
Yeah,
guys, go watch
just
the
watch
the
that
documentary.
trilogy and all the documentaries and all the fan. They've
Yeah,
done dozens, hundreds of interviews. Like
For the Love of Spock is an amazing documentary by his son. Like it's a phenomenal documentary that talks about his life, but it tells you more about all of this stuff that took place with Star Trek, like the early years, like both the TV show and the original
yeah, it
motion
was
picture
like
series.
all the dissecting we're doing about the MCU. Star
Yeah.
Trek did that well before
Yep.
anybody else.
Yep.
And like they were the first true modern fandom, the most
Yep.
mature fandom in like pop culture that we have right now. And like speaking of Search for Spock, like stealing the Enterprise is maybe my favorite Star Trek scene ever. That
Yeah.
whole sequence is just perfection. But Wrath of Khan as a movie is the perfect Star Trek movie.
Right.
Pathos is in chat. First Contact is my second favorite Star Trek movie. And then it's a really tight log jam. Like you could throw in Star Trek Beyond in there because that's just a great movie. You could throw in like Voyage Home is just a phenomenal Star Trek comedy.
Right.
You
Right.
know, all that is there. So yeah, that it's a great franchise, and I had to have it on my list. But I was going through my list. I'm like, I think it's my favorite movie of all time.
Wow. Like I I knew it was there, but I didn't think it was going to be there. Like
And
I knew
again,
that Star Trek was going to be
my list
hovering
is
around.
very fluid. There will be moments where I'm like, oh, I want Dread over Star Trek. You know,
I think the main thing is like these are our like if we had like I said if we were sitting at home for the next 2 or 3 days, we wanted to watch movies to make us happy. You know, if these 5 movies were in our queue ready to go, by the end of watching all 5 of those movies, you'd be like, okay, I had a really good.
oh yeah,
This is why I like cinema,
it'd be
right?
a hell
That's
of a
really what.
weekend getting
Yeah,
all these movies in.
man, wow.
So I believe I saw Jaren earlier. If he's still here, I don't have a list from you, but if you want to give me a list, go nuts with your favorite movies. But I think that about wraps it up. We are just about an hour of actual recording time. Anything else you want to throw in, Fusion?
It's been a hell of a few years here. We started this
Yeah, we
in the
started during
middle of
COVID after the
during
DC
COVID.
fandom,
Yes, the DC fandom.
which was one of the coolest fan events I've ever watched. They brought some big guns to that.
It makes you wonder what these companies their executives go through because like fandom phenomenal, right? Um During the height of like the E3 stuff and the showcasing, Ubisoft, they had Aisha Tyler come out. They would present like games and productions and all that. We were like there was a stretch there of about 6 or 7 years where we just like content creation and how it was showcased was phenomenal, man. And then it just went off the rails. Like
Yeah,
they
it's like
got
they
so
kind of
fucking
forgot how to
greedy.
do great like hypes, and part of that's because of leaks. They're really
Yeah.
prevalent now. They weren't
I will
10 to
say
15
I
years ago.
I will say I do appreciate Disney. Disney is still trying to keep the Star Wars fan celebration a big thing, like
Oh
the
yeah,
way they do it, like the service that they do for everyone. And I will tell you, the coolest thing about that is that the fan celebration has allowed the community to show their respect and re-embrace, like Dave Filoni putting him out there on the big
yeah. Like
stage.
remember when Hayden came back?
Hayden Christensen, I was going to say, like he's having a resurgence right now with Obi-Wan and with Ahsoka. I'm cool with that, man. I wasn't a fan, but I didn't hate his acting. I just wasn't a fan
The
Like
movie
when he
just
was
was
playing.
not good.
No, Attack of the Clones is like, yeah, pretty bad. But when I think back, like we have the benefit of hindsight now. Like I think Revenge of the Sith was actually a really good movie.
Just so you know, we're on another tangent.
Yeah,
It's
we're
what
gonna
we
wrap
do.
up with it then.
But hey, it's what we do. But like
We're
you
gonna
were
do this
saying,
with a
like
tangent.
those showcases, like we started because of a showcase. Like remember
Yeah.
that Batman trailer? That
Yep.
blew our fucking socks off, and I was like, I need to talk about this,
Yeah.
and that's what became the basis of our first show. So speaking of our show, do you have any like stick out to you as like that was a really fun one to record?
Well, I will say the Mass Effect one was really fun because
Oh
we were
yeah,
breaking down like just who's S tier, who's B tier, D tier characters. That was one of my favorite ones. I'll bring it up again. The listing one last year
oh the
of
MCU
the
was a
MCU.
great time.
Oh man, it just because it made me remember like all of the films that we've watched that Marvel's put out there. But those are some of my favorite ones. Actually, with Nick, the sports one was actually. If I had to think about like these events with Nick going over our top sports movies, I
Yeah,
really love that one.
I agree. That is on my list of like, man, I can't believe I messed up that audio because it doesn't sound the best.
Yeah,
I that was around the time we were doing a cure for Crohn's, and I had installed RTX voice because we were redoing our roof, and I messed up some settings, and my mic sounded terrible. And it's this mic, which doesn't sound bad, but the audio was not very good, but the content was awesome. We had a great time talking our top 5 sports movies.
and it was funny because our lists were so different, but then there was so many that we could agree that hey, yeah, I should have put that in mine. You know, versus like, oh, I get why you have that and I don't, but then it was reminiscing on all those sports films. That was great stuff, man.
Yep. So like I said, this is the last as it exists right now WAFER episode. It's been a really fun 3+ years. You know,
Yeah.
we've done a lot of cool shows, had some great guests and friends come on to talk various different things in pop culture, from video games to comic books, movies, and TV shows. And we'll continue to have similar content if you're watching this on my YouTube channel or on Twitch. We'll have future live content as well. Like Ahsoka's coming up for the finale, Loki's about to drop. Other movies are coming out. Some are getting delayed, like Dune, that really hurt because of the strike. But that'll be kind of specific video content on YouTube or Twitch. So if you like that kind of thing, drop a subscribe if you're not already. But Fusion, thanks for hanging for the final WAFER episode.
As always, man, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy talking about geekdom with you, man.
Oh, for
It's
sure.
been a good
And of
ride.
course, if you like our conversations, you should go check out Two Back Set, which is our college football show that we
Yeah.
do currently. We're talking college football this season. Every week we have an episode. We record generally on Wednesdays and have the episodes up on Thursdays. It's Two Back Set. Two is spelled out like TWO. So search that on YouTube and you'll find us there. Actually, I got some SEO that works. You can find us the first time you search for something. It is great. So yeah, we're gonna do it for now. I don't know if I'm gonna stream anything else tonight, other than just go back to editing this. So thanks everyone for hanging, and for the final time, see you around.